Welcome to ITC. I have, I wanted to just take some time to welcome you guys, but also give you a very quick overview of what you do here. Now, I do not want to repeat some of the stuff that people like Uday or Sunil or some of the folks after me would have already covered. So what I'll do is, I'll try and give you a very, very quick snapshot of what we do at a very high level. And my emphasis is not to go down at the level of APIM or anything else to be able to talk about, what do we do there. Yes, I might have a couple of slides that I show you which tell you what products we use internally, what products we develop out of here, and so on. My focus will be really to tell you, what is this engine about that does this innovation? And I'll take a few random examples to be able to show you what innovation we do. Typically, when I do this session, it takes about 2 hours. So, I'm very constrained. So you'll see me rushing through a lot of the content and just giving you a very good flavor of it. The team's already here. If there are pieces here that you want to double click into, just let me know, or just let one of the teams know, and we can do a sort of follow-up session and go into more detail. There are things like the garage that I'll talk about and things like that. Those are here, so in one of the breaks, you guys can go down and take a look at what's in there and so on. But again, by design, this session is going to be sort of fairly rushed, but a very high-level overview of what we are doing. So without further ado, this is the lab, and you guys have screens. And by the way, there are a lot of chairs up here, so if you guys want to come forward for this part, you're welcome to do that as well. Effectively, ITC is about 2,100 people. It's spread between Hyderabad and Bangalore. We have about 300 people in Bangalore. Most of the other folks around this 30-acre campus that we have. It's a really beautiful facility. And we call it like a microcosm of CA all up, because you literally have every function here. So you met Uday yesterday. He runs the IT infrastructure teams. You have me that runs the sort of the figurehead for the lab, but I also run all of the engineering teams, which is a large part of what we call the CPO organization. We have product support. We have sales and services. We have corporate functions. We have, I talked about the information system teams and so on. So we literally have, across these two facilities, the largest sort of concentration of talent anywhere in CA. Because we are a very distributed company, but 2,100 of our total 11,000 people are all in these two facilities. And in terms of numbers, if I were to think about it, there are some interesting numbers. Like, for example, almost 40% of all engineering happens in India. Right? And I'll give you some examples of literally, the contribution from this team is about 100% engineering for over about $700 million worth of products that we ship. But we contribute to $1 billion more of sort of engineering that happens, or products that we ship out of this lab. So very high presence in there. Obviously, we're looking at sort of global customers and global product outreach out of here. A large part of our IT and infrastructure teams are here. In terms of innovation, we look at multiple metrics, but this number is actually a little bit dated. Our current numbers stand at about 28% of all patents getting filed for CA worldwide are out of India, and so on. So again, the criticality of this center to CA and the success of CA is something that we talk about very vocally. And this is not like one of those back office operations that you started a few years ago. Because if I look at the journey, we've been here for a very long time. We've been in CA in a fairly large presence for over 15 years. And not a whole lot of companies, especially in Hyderabad, can boast about that. We sort of incrementally went down that journey. When we started, we were about 50 people in Chennai, and from there we sort of relocated that team to Hyderabad, set up our center in 2003, and that's when we started thinking about constructing a facility. This facility came up in 2007, and when we started out, we had the sort of a single building and a capacity to host about 1,700 people. So we started with one campus, then we sort of expanded that campus and created a second building, sort of which is next door. Today we have a capacity of almost 3,000 people on campus here. We're not quite there yet. And then we've got sort of a whole set of capabilities that came up. Something that is quite unique to this campus that a lot of people don't learn about. We actually run a full Montessori on campus. With the 80-seater Montessori that runs on campus, we've got trained professional teachers. A lot of our employees, obviously their kids all go there. In fact, there's a waiting list there for 6 years to get your kid admitted to Montessori. So we've got a fairly innovative campus, and I don't know if honestly you guys will get a chance, but it's a microcosm of a full community in itself. In terms of me and my leadership team, so we're structured just like we are structured globally. And so I report into Ayman, who is the head of products worldwide, who reports into Mike. And I have my directs who report into the respective GMs who run the respective, what we call lines of businesses. So we have Sumit, who runs the security business, and actually you'll be hearing from Sumit after me. We have Sakar running the DevOps business. We've got Subbu running the Agile management business. We've got mainframe under Karthik, and then we've got a whole for the Bangalore team, which is primarily doing payment security, and we'll have a person there. And then we have a common software horizontal that is run by Harsha. So that's how we are approximately structured. In terms of what we do, we already talked about the headcount part and so on. If I look across the various lines of businesses, you'll get to see in the various business units in there, what are some of the products that we have a large presence for. So we have a huge presence in, for example, the DevOps portfolio, especially around Agile operations. So UIM, Spectrum, Gateway, a whole bunch of components there. If I look at API management, API Gateway and API is out of here. If I look at things like workload automation is done out of here. ITSM, PPM, you can look at pretty much everything that we do in the payment security suite. SSO and all these tools are all done out of this lab right here. Payment security, most of the engineering for payment security is out of Bangalore as well. So the focus of this slide is really to talk about how we've got a very broad representation, and in a lot of places, what we've tried to do is create self-sufficient Scrum teams and Agile teams that are actually responsible for end-to-end delivery, not just of components, but in some cases entire products done out of here. So that's just a sort of a high-level summary of what our footprint is across the engineering organization. Here's another view, which is of interest to a lot of you guys, and we've talked about it, and I think Uday must have touched upon some of this. This really talks about how we use our own products internally, right? And my ideal state is with all of these boxes checked off, and a lot of these things all dark green, which shows we are advanced users of that. Unfortunately, we're not quite there yet, and you can imagine we've done a lot of acquisitions recently, so we're still trying to understand and assimilate some of these acquisitions, but we have some expertise in pockets. So what you'll see is, we are obviously very strong users of PPM, Agile Central, and tools like Veracode and FlowDoc and so on. But when you start looking at the developer products, there are some pockets, and unless we had a very critical presence of something being used across our tool chain, I've not put it up here. Yeah? So there are obviously a few teams that are using, say, SV or TDM or ARD or some of these products, and I've not put them in there just because it would be very isolated. Our goal and the journey we've been on is how do we dog food more and more of our products? How do we make sure that we use them end to end? So our infrastructure story, our security story, and so on are obviously really good because our teams in GIS are using them extensively, but we certainly want to do more in this space across the portfolio. That's a nutshell on that slide. I don't need to tell you this. You are customers of ours or prospects of ours, so you probably understand this, but we are industry leaders in almost for 21 different products that we have across the portfolio, and that list keeps on growing. I've been here for 10 months. We've had 5 new things getting added to that list in just the last 10 months. So it's a good story, and it's also reflective of what we are doing in terms of not just execution, but thought leadership and making sure that we are taking these products to be truly evolutionary and revolutionary in some cases. Now this is a section that I'll spend some time on because I wanted to what is the magic behind the recipe, and it's clearly making sure that we have a DNA which sort of facilitates innovation and that facilitates a lot of learning. I'll give you some examples. So we have an accelerator. It's an internal accelerator where if you have a smart idea, you just sort of take it to the CTO office and you can actually get funded for it. And when you get funded for it, you literally get moved into a different team. You're assured of your day job. Even if you come back after a year, you can come back and do your day job after that. Your job will be secure. But for the duration of which you're working on the accelerator, you are on the accelerator and dedicated to that. So really novel concept, works really well. Lots of hackathons. We already talked about a very extensive patent portfolio and a patent program. We've got a language lab, we call it COMAID. It's a unique thing pretty much. I haven't seen that in most organizations which are engineering organizations, where because we want to talk about end-to-end leadership, you want to talk about being able to have world-class communication skills and so on. That facility takes care of that. We've got a very extensive technical, we call it a Tech Aid program that allows you to pick up learning from any of our platforms like Coursera or anything else, but also custom designed programs that you can learn out of that. And then there's CA Garage, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. We spend a lot of focus on our talent excellence initiatives, right? And this is an internal slide. I just wanted to sort of talk about it in the context of, we have programs that we have dedicated to management excellence, to our technical excellence, making sure we have a world-class architecture community. We're spending huge amounts of investment right now in growing our PM muscle, the product management muscle, because as you have ownership, the ownership's not complete if you don't also have product management sitting right out of here and doing a lot of the work. And we're spending a lot of effort in terms of literally democratizing AI and ML technologies, data sciences technologies across the lab. I'll touch upon that in terms of what it's showing in terms of value. We're also probably one of the largest adopters of safe and agile in the world, right? If you look at how mature we are, by the way, this space is actually one of the spaces we use for agile. If you actually go to the other side, you probably see a team that's actually working on their what they call PI planning right now. And so we have this, literally the whole space opens up, and this is where teams block this space for 2 days and do their massive PI planning. And once they're done with that PI planning, the output of that literally is something that they go all execute on for the next 3 months with very little this thing, because all dependencies and all those things are managed. So spend an amazing amount of time getting agile right. The agile maturity is very, very high, and we've done multiple sessions with our customers as well as in terms of in the industry, in terms of how do you do agile at scale using some of the stuff that we have. We have this unique framework when we talk about innovation, how we capture innovation. We have this framework which we call Shake Up. And the premise around that is fairly simple. If somebody has an idea, you literally go to this portal and you say, I have an idea, and you basically say, okay, here's the idea, what do you want to do with it? And it's a very structured approach to how you go about taking that idea and taking it through a process to getting it matured, right? And I'll show you some slides around it, but you literally go to a portal and say, I have an idea. It asks you a bunch of questions. Okay, what is the problem about? You basically go through that. It goes into a bucket. You get assigned a mentor. The mentor will quickly decide based on that, hey, is this genuine? Is it valuable? Or is it just noise? It gets disposed in some particular manner. And if not, then you go to a process and it says it should end up at the accelerator level. It should get rejected. It should become a product feature. It should go into a community. It should become a tool or utility, or we should just park it in a black hole somewhere. So, but having that closed loop ecosystem is phenomenal. So here's an example. This is the portal. You come in there. You effectively say, I have an idea. You sort of press the button. It basically gives you a lot of categories in terms of what the idea is. You start entering the details. It shows up like that on screen. Basically, here are all the ideas. People vote on those ideas, and then a mentor gets assigned based on sort of the community voting mechanism. So it's like creating our own ecosystem of an idea factory. And it could be related to a tool. It could be related to a service. It could be related to a specific customer challenge that we're dealing with and how to accomplish that. Or it could be usage of our own infrastructure and doing it better and so on. So a lot of our IT folks pick up a lot of suggestions from here and improve the infrastructure. So probably these screens came as a result of that, is somebody saying that, this is not a very efficient system for PI planning, because when we were doing PI planning, everybody would have to come to the front to look at what's going on. We figured this is an alternate way to do that, as an example, right? And so, again, there's a full process for it. You have a template that you're given to carve out what we call a lean canvas, right? You fill out the lean canvas, which says what's the business problem, what is the issue that you're trying to solve, what's the target audience, what is the impact possible, and you take that through the loop. Just an example. Another place that we are very active in terms of our thought leadership is just publications. This is a subset, but you look at it, you'll find that there are, we're talking constantly about technologies that are relevant to us, blockchain, as well as security offerings and so on, or agile and agile practitioners, or the stuff that we're doing in the infrastructure space or AI/ML, and we're constantly thinking about, what is the next big thing. We're partnering with our, sales and marketing folks, and we're publishing a lot of stuff in the lab. We also have a very active LinkedIn community. We've got a very active Facebook community, and so if you aren't on those portals already, I'm sure Sunanda can get you guys set up with that. This was, again, I just wanted to show you that what we decided a while back was data sciences is the future, and it's not going to be in one product or the other. Every single product will benefit from data sciences. So we rolled out a program which we call the Citizen Data Sciences Program. And the goal of that program is, in the next 2 years, literally have every individual across this lab, all the 1,200 engineers that we have, get to a level 100 to a level 200 to, in some cases, beyond that, understanding of data sciences, being able to play with these tools, being able to create models or at least use models, understand sort of how to work with languages like R and Python and so on, to be able to go write simple models and then apply them, more importantly, to their specific programs. A fairly revolutionary thing, which we think is actually going to provide us a lot of interesting sort of scenarios in terms of what we do in terms of next-gen AI. And I'll give you one example of that. I talked about Garage. If you guys get a chance, by the way, the lobby that you entered in from, on the right side of that is the CA Garage, and you can go and take a look at that. It's a fantastic space. It's got some maker bay. We actually use it for a lot of tech talks and stuff. There'll be always some talk on blockchain or some hackathon or something else going on in that facility. It's very heavily used. And these are just some numbers in terms of what people have done. We've got robotic kits in there, so you can do some IoT and hardware tinkering in there. You actually have a lot of third-party technologies to go play with, and so on. So fairly interesting, and we've got all sorts of programs that we run out there. One of them is a demo day, which is actually very well received. We bring in school children and do STEM activities with school children in terms of helping them tinker with technology and start young and get that interest going and so on. Anyways, one scenario that I wanted to a little bit double click into and sort of talk a little bit about is AI/ML. So we are living in a world of AI, and we're moving away from, if you think about the generations of software, generation 1 was monolithic, then client server, then mobile and cloud, and everybody's talking about the new paradigm is going to be around things like DevSecOps, it's going to be around AI/ML, it's going to be around blockchain. So one of the things we thought about is, it's great to create an analogy of that, and the analogy that I'm going to use in this case is about self-driving cars to self-driving apps. Right? If you think about self-driving cars, you went from manual steering to, you get some warnings about blind spots, to automated lane assist parking, to getting to that, end nirvana state, which is called autonomic driving. I think software is going through that same evolution in terms of how we look at data and so on as well. So let's just, I'll run through the story very quickly in the interest of time, but I'll flash some scenarios to it. So, level 0 or level 1, whatever you call it, was literally manual reporting and analysis, right? The analogy is basically manual steering. I throw up a bunch of data for you, lots of interesting insights in there, and you start drowning in that sea of reports, trying to figure out what you do with it. You'd be amazed how many companies are still in this level, including ours, in various pockets. Right? We have lots and lots of reporting coming out of Agile Central, and it's left to you to decide what you want to do with it. So the level 1 is where you starting getting some intelligence. So you apply machine learning, and now you start getting, say, abnormality detection to say, hey, here's a pattern that continued to flow, but suddenly my response time went up 10x. Something wrong with it. You might want to look at it. So there was too much noise in the system. I gave you some insights to go and look into that noise. The level, sort of the challenge with sort of this scenario is you can get some alarm notifications and things like that. So you can be sort of, okay, here are 8 service alarms, go double click into it, but you still have to do a lot of the work to go from there. The advantage in this scenario is obviously the mean time to resolution can be resolved because you're not lost in that sea of information that you had. Now, get from there, if I can now start giving you some automated root cause analysis, that gives you a little bit more maturity in your system. And this is sort of, the analogy to this is, if I can help you do lane assist. I'm still not going to let you drive your car yourself, but those, that 3-turn parking is a pain. If I can help you with that in itself is a good thing. So you start getting some service level analytics, you start mapping some of the key assets, and you start visually looking at root cause analysis and what happened and what was the result of it, and you start looking at patterns and so on. So that's sort of an interesting stage. Now, but that's in an isolation across individual apps. Now if you can start aggregating that and looking at unified visualization, unified correlation, and more automated workflows, then you can start doing a lot more intelligence in terms of saying, okay, when this happens, this happens. So the moment I know that the first event triggered, I should be ready to know that I might run out of memory or I might run out of disk, and I can start taking measures proactively. But I'm still doing that, a lot of that manually. For this to happen, all of your data needs to be in one repository. And so a lot of the work that we've done over the last year or so is actually creating a single data lake and creating a single analytics and visualization platform within CA. We call it Jarvis. And that allows us to be able to do these kinds of visualizations and stuff. You take that to the next level. Now you start want to think about intelligence, and you want to start thinking about self-healing. Right? So it's not just about saying that I know when this happens. When it happens, what do I do to fix it, and what is the sort of response? So if I need to spin off 2 more AWS instances to be able to reduce the load on the server, I'll do that automatically through a trigger rather than waiting manually. And you start constantly running these, what we call what-if scenarios, to say, what if this happened, what if that happened? It's a great story. And again, I'm rushing through this in the interest of time, but you can think about it, sort of how we are correlating this to pull all of this together into what we call, in our case, I mean, the specific domain that I'm going after is the AI ops mechanism field, right? So in my AI ops field, I should be able to do everything from predictive self-healing to auto-remediation to understanding the context of the data, to doing everything from anomaly detection to pattern detection to remediation and so on. And that's where we are today, right? We have actually released solutions in the marketplace which span all the way from mainframe, which is our solution there is what we call MOI, all the way to the distributed side, and we have digital operational intelligence, which does exactly that. And that sort of end-to-end self-healing solution is getting some amazing market validation, right? Lots of customers on top of it already. You can see some names in here. But it's that, the way I want to talk about this story is not in terms of this particular product offering or anything. We are sort of creating the engine underneath it right here in this lab. That is going to fuel this kind of transformation for every single business and every single product line that we have. Right? The patterns are exactly the same. You start by collecting a lot of the data. You start by creating some intelligence out of that data. You start by correlating data across multiple activities, and then you start figuring out how to use that data. So that's sort of the story that I wanted to sort of talk about. Now, in terms of all of this is not very relevant if we don't really have a very active connect with the customer directly, right? So these sessions for us are incredibly valuable because you guys come in, and you not only sort of listen to what we have, you tell us what you have and what you bring to the table in these contexts. So we spent an incredible amount of time actually engaging with customers like yourselves and folks like Sunanda and Sunil and their teams. Take us into a lot of the accounts to say, hey, here's what's going on. Come and tell your story, but more importantly, learn how they are using your software and how it's deployed. We're also spending an incredible amount of time with our GSI partners. Right, so we've identified 7 partners and 7 plays to say for security, we're going to work with this particular vendor. For this particular horizontal or vertical, we're going to work with this particular provider and work with them in creating these communities of practices that they understand what is the value proposition that our solutions bring and how do we use them. And then we're sort of tracking them very, very carefully as well. We also work with a broader ecosystem of partners, and so we've had multiple partner events that the field teams have organized for us to get more of these things. And it's always a two-way street as far as I'm concerned, right? It's not just about us saying that, hey, let me tell you what my solution does. That's only as interesting. It's also about learning what is it that you're doing that is different, and what are the gaps that you're finding in the solutions and so on. And I'm hoping that the day today, the fact that you guys are in ITC, you will really leverage that opportunity, as a lot of my directs will be around here, to basically have that next level of conversation of saying, hey, I love this product, but this is where I'm struggling. I heard it's happening already in this lab. Can I give you some direct feedback? Or can I have a sort of follow-on session and so on?